And did you have to be involved with finding a printer, or did Ed do
No,
it?
this is Ed. In fact, on the back page of the magazine, this person, I don't know who this is, but Ed must have had a good relationship with them at the time. They helped us out. Again, the first year I got a lot of help from behind with Ed. If I did it now, I'd want to be more involved, but at the time I was, like layout, I had never done layout before. I'm thinking, magazine layout, how tricky can it be? And you can see as you go, the first ones are pretty rough, and that's what Ed helping me, but by the third one, in fact, I did the second one, the layout, but I actually had an editor do the third one.
So
They
with
got more
that first,
sophisticated.
with that first issue where you said you wrote half the articles,
Yeah.
did you use InDesign? Had you previously used that
No.
program? What did you use to do the layout?
An old program might have been Photoshop.
Okay.
Oh, no, we were using Page. I have to tell you,
PageMaker.
this is 2002. I truly don't remember. It wasn't InDesign because I would remember it because that's something people use now. It was an older program. I'd have to ask Ed.
And did Ed train you? Did they just lock you in a room and make you spin straw into gold?
So what happened is I sat down and I did roughly what I wanted to do. And then Ed came behind me and very politely said, if we do white on this page but green on this page, it will pop. I'm like, ooh, okay. And if we stagger these, it'll be easier to look at. I said, ooh, thank you. So a lot of it was, there was a lot of education from Ed. Now I had taken some MAPW classes, but they weren't layout. They were like web design and some other things, but I had never done. I really jumped. I kind of fell really into the deep end. But anyway, and then after he gave me some suggestions, I'm like, okay, now I want to go do it. Thank you for suggestions. But in fact, and there's things I would do differently now, of course.
What would you do? Have you kept up with Talon? Have you watched it as it progressed over the years?
Not really. When Kiki did it, I kept track.
Your mission for Talon, as far as how, were you creating something, for college kids, by college kids, or did you have, what was your mission?
My mission was to produce a feature magazine for the school because we worked out a yearbook wasn't going to work. There was no interest in yearbook. I wanted us to have an ongoing feature magazine, preferably done by students. I mean, the fact that I was a grad student and a little bit older, I think it was just to give it sort of a base to work from. It was always, I think, going to be, the plan was always going to be undergraduates, just like with Sentinel and Share for the most part. But I wanted to give us a really good foundation so that when I left and the next person came on, they could say, we have issues. We have a certain level of quality. We have a look we want to maintain. We don't want to stop. Like I want to get the ball rolling, keep the ball rolling, and have it be something that was in the future. And be something people want to work on. I liked working on the newspaper, but, and I wrote articles for the newspaper, but that wasn't really my interest, that sort of daily. I was interested in feature articles. I wanted us to have, and I wasn't interested in Share, that was too arty for me. I wanted there to be a place where people who were interested in feature article writing could go.
And then as far as organizing your staff and maintaining that focus, did you develop a staff manual or?
Not at all.
How did you conduct business?
Well, the first time was just me and Aaron, and we just emailed a lot. Really, it was I got to be pretty casual for my staff, because they were all people I knew. And so I was able to email them and say, give me your stuff, drop it off. I got very lucky. I had to manage very few people, and the people I managed to rope into it were already sort of super responsible, so I'm just going to say very, very lucky.
And then as far as promotion and awareness of the magazine, did you try to do anything to increase, the audience or?
No, I was just happy to have an issue out. I mean, we did it, once we produced it, we put it in the usual places. Now, I'm also going to remind you that this is 12 years ago. The dorms opened that year. We were tiny, relatively speaking. There was no nursing school, no nursing building. Half the arts and music buildings weren't there. It was stunning when I came, like I said, I came back to work here a year and a half ago and went, wow. There was no commons. There was a much smaller campus, so I could walk around campus, drop off the magazine and all the newspaper spots in a couple hours and be done. I think we did have Kennesaw Hall at the time, but we might not have had KSU Center yet. So no, we just went with, if they pick up a newspaper, maybe they'll pick up a Talon. And I'm sure Ed did some stuff behind the scenes too.
But what would
I
you
might.
have done differently knowing what you know now?
I would have tried for more staff earlier. I would have, because, more staff is better than less staff. Because if people don't show up with articles, you go, oh, that's okay. I would have tried for more advertising because I would have liked to have made the magazine bigger. It's pretty much as skinny as we could do it on our budget.
What was the page count for your budget?
I don't recall. We'd have to count the pages. It's not, 12, 20. It's not very much.
Okay.
Ed told me the page number, and that's the page number, And I would have been more involved with those details because at the time, like I said, I was just happy to get a magazine. But it would have been good, especially for a career, to have been a little more involved. Now, I'm a bookkeeper, so it's not that I couldn't have handled those numbers. I just wasn't, I was thinking like a writer, editor. I wasn't thinking at the time as big a picture as I should have, and I wish I'd got a little more involved in that. Well, one of the things we did, so the first issue was, again, kind of things we brought together that had already been done. The year in KSU, 9/11 had just happened, so we had some great pictures on that. When we did the 40th one, and I'm not sure if it's also the one that has the artwork in it, we were trying to get beyond just, okay, so the magazines that happened, not Sphere, but before me, were the feature magazines were sort of, there was a guy, like the guy in his big yellow truck who's famous on campus. I'm like, really? Like, we can be big picture here. We're like, even 10 years ago, we knew Kennesaw State was taking off. So my first husband remembers when it was Kennesaw Junior College. Kennesaw College, in fact, his diploma got redone to say Kennesaw State University because it was Kennesaw College when he first. So you could see our upward trajectory. Betty was still here when I was here. Things were still moving up. And so what we were trying to do with our articles, we went and featured all the art that was up in the president's office. There's an article on that. We started talking about the international aspect of Kennesaw State. One of our cover articles is about China, which I don't know, most people realize now China has a huge relationship with KSU. It was just starting then. We were really trying to look at some sort of things that were big picture, that people were going to be able to go back and look in 10 years at our articles and go, hey, they were there at the beginning of that, or they could see what was coming. That kind of the greatness of KSU seems like a lot to say, but you could see that we were on an upward trajectory and that we were recording that for the future. In fact, one of them I say, taking our place as a university, we really I want the Future magazine to have some articles of permanence. Mixed in with, let me just say, we did start doing a club feature, a feature about various student organizations, because that's where I really want to try to get buy-in. We had a number of organizations who I said, we're going to feature you. You said, yes. Like, awesome. There's an audience right there. So you asked me about audience before I hadn't thought about it. We tried to get a lot of, like I said, student organizations to give us a little, and we told them, I'm like, it will only be happy. And that's another issue. We did not do cutting edge stories, really. That was not our goal. We weren't, there were no Pulitzers were going to come out. We wanted something people wanted to read with a little. We have one about someone complaining about how you had to pay to graduate, that fee. That was like the trickiest article we did. My goal was not to be, I knew this. It was not to be hard-hitting and incisive and investigatory. I wanted a positive magazine, positive but truthful magazine. I say this because when I was on staff of the Sentinel, I did an article about, there's a student art show in the basement of the library. And again, remember, I'm like a 30-something adult, right? I have a job and children and stuff. And I went down there, and the artwork was very expensive. So I said a nice thing about the thing, and people should go see it. And I said, but if you're a student looking to buy artwork, you're going to suffer some sticker shock. I got called by University Relations. They're like, we need you to change that. I said, well, First Amendment, not changing anything. I said, and I have to tell you, I'm a grown-up with an income, a husband with a good income, and I'm telling you, I could not possibly buy any of that stuff. So I don't think the students could either. So if you're pitching it to other people, that's okay, but for the student newspaper, they need to know. So that was like the trickiest article I ever did. But so Talon, I wasn't trying to kiss any ass, but I also wasn't really trying to upset anyone either. Like I said, I wanted something that was sort of showed the forward progress, the excellence of KSU, the great potential we had, and how well we had done.
Yeah.
And something I want to say, and I told you early on, it would not have happened without the Sentinel staff. Well, Ed. Ed is, without Ed, and Ed's very good about letting you make your own way. But there's no way I could not have done it without Ed going, and we're going to work on this. Oh, yeah. And let me just take a look. Oh, yeah. So Ed was huge. And also the Sentinel staff at the time, if I could not have gone next door and said to those guys, I am desperate. I need a photographer. And one of them said, okay. And Court Peterson, who at the time had been a Sentinel, the chief, he was no longer the chief. I'm like, Court, I need articles. I need you to go find some student organizations and interview them. Like I'm saying, if I hadn't had friends and Sentinel staff, then it would not have happened. I certainly couldn't have done it alone. So those guys were huge. So that relationship at the time, Sentinel and Talon, was a big, big deal.